I'm driving to Rocky Vista Osteopathic Medical School. I left from Vegas, and I forgot about the time change, so I was going to try to give myself a 1 hour leeway, and now I'm basically going to be showing up just minutes before my lecture is going to start, which I hate that because I don't even know if I can get my Mac to work, but I think this is the topic that I'm really well suited for, so I think it's going to be okay.
Love is love. Love is love.
Okay, set it down. Derek's going to introduce you too.
Just a heads up, pizza will be here at the end of the talk, so about 5:45, 6 o'clock. Thanks for coming out today. We have Dr. Mullen. He's an osteopathic physician. He graduated from Midwestern University in Arizona, did a surgery internship in Denver, his residency in anesthesiology at Yale, pediatric anesthesia fellowship at Seattle Children's Hospital. They worked with Doctors Without Borders in Sudan, Nigeria. They worked in New Zealand practicing intensive care and anesthesia. He came back to the USA and completed a second fellowship in pediatric cardiac anesthesia, and finally he settled at the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, taking care of children undergoing heart surgery. In his quest for finding meaningful work, he's been up to over 60 countries, where he survived dengue fever in Thailand, food poisoning at Mount Everest. He was not kidnapped in Nigeria. He has climbed 3 of the world's highest mountains, and is now married with 2 children. He's hoping to change America's broken healthcare system by giving lectures, writing a book, and making YouTube videos. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Mullen.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. I know you guys are super busy with studying everything, but I promise I'll make this very worthwhile. So now that you know a little bit more about me, I'm a pediatric cardiac anesthesiologist at Children's Hospital in LA. So I'm a highly specialized DO. I know a lot of people in the public think that DOs do a lot of primary care, which we do, but we also get very, very specialized. And you guys, this is what I think about when I think about where you guys are right now. I was there not that long ago, and it just felt so overwhelming. Couple disclosures. I did experience professional burnout at one point, but was able to recover from that. I do like my job. I don't always love it, but I like it. I love my work-life balance. I love adventures. I'm writing a book, and have a lot of failures and a lot of successes. There's some things that I wish that I knew as a pre-med in your shoes. Just, I wish I didn't worry so much. I wish I was, maybe more confident, wanted to just be myself. And I kind of wish I just spent some time thinking about what I wanted my life to look like, like 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And when I come back in a couple of weeks, I'll do a lot of travel talk about some other stuff, but what I did thank you very much for doing this survey. I got a little bit to know you guys, and so is anybody here not a osteopathic medical student? And mostly MS2s and some MS1s, is that right? Okay, so it sounds like not a whole lot has changed, and since I came through school, you guys were mostly worried about board scores as number 1, and choosing a specialty number 2, and then all this other stuff, and that was kind of the same as it was for me. There's a couple different things that you guys indicated that was going to be interesting to you. I'm going to try to put it all together in a story, basically how I went from where you are now to where I am now. And I went through a lot, and I think with this, there's a secret in this story, and I think see if you can figure it out. I'm going to tell the story, and by the end of the whole talk, see if you can figure out what the secret is. I'll tell you, but sometimes the story means something different to different people. So the secret from going from where you are now to kind of like being a happy, settled in and having all the work-life balance, everything you want, I'm going to tell you. So when I was a MS2, my friend Jason and I, we were roommates. I had actually two friends. It's a story about Stephanie, who was one of my friends, and Jason. I lived with Jason. So Stephanie and Jason and I, we always worked really hard. We studied like crazy. But we didn't want to be super competitive though. We really we were excited about our classes, but we always reminded each other to like not take it too seriously. We wanted to, keep it fun. And I'll never forget this one weekend where Stephanie and I were thinking about going to see this concert in Sedona. I went to Midwestern University, and we were thinking about going to this concert, Ben Harper, and we decided, you know what, not this weekend. We really got to study for this microbiology test. And we didn't go. And I remember my roommate Jason, we talked about maybe going to go see the Grand Canyon, and so these are some of the things we were thinking about. And then we, I don't know why this slide is in here, I'm going to skip this. By the way, definitely driving in from another state is a tough way to come in and get a lecture started on time. One of the things that I think is important to think about right now as you're starting to decide what you want to do is think about what was exciting for you. Just take a moment and think about what was exciting for you when you were what got you interested in medicine. And that's the image that you kind of want to hold on to as you start to decide what you want to do. And this is a picture of me, but what was important to me was this was a picture of me in Costa Rica after I finished my first year of med school, and I just really enjoyed doing a lot of primary care and just like one-on-one time with the patients and the community. And this is in Costa Rica and Nicaragua, and for me it was all about like just getting out and doing adventures whenever I could. And this is in Peru. And just, I would go to these like villages and just like meet people and just try to teach them what I knew. And a lot of that was about kind of like diet and exercise, which you guys already know all about. But, so one of the things that happened in medical school was that, does anybody have the first aid for step 1 in their backpack right now? Okay, so do you think, would you be able to open that up to the page that has the nephron, the kidney? Like, do you know what that page number is? So somebody told me, when I was a second year, they said, if you want to do well on your boards, just memorize first aid for step 1. And I said, memorize it, okay. And they're like, no, like really memorize it. These guys they said that they knew the page number. And I was like, that's crazy. But after we had gone through it 5 times, we knew it to that level. And so I think that was something that we decided that we were going to do, a central source. We memorized it, and we knew it to that level of detail. And it was that's very helpful because when we actually took the test was so hard. I didn't think the test was going to be that hard. You actually, there's multiple choice questions where there are 26 different answers, all this crazy stuff. And it's you had to know it, just photographic memory. And the only way to really do that was to be able to, go through it that many times. So another thing that someone told us to do was, once you kind of get to that final month before your test, you kind of go into this extreme mode. And it's difficult to kind of hold this pace, but just recognize that you're going to go into a really intense period right now where you're gearing up for your boards, those of you that are second years, and then it's going to back off a little bit, and then you kind of it'll change as you kind of go through your rotations. But so we did that, and we tried to do it as best we could. We went kind of crazy during that final month, and Jason got a 98% on his complex. I got a 96. I got a 93 in USMLE. I forgot what Stephanie got, but so we did what we wanted to do, and so I'm not saying that to brag. I want to tell this as a cautionary tale. Because what had happened was then, let me get to the next part. One of the things that's really interesting about what's happening now is a lot of people are looking at when burnout starts, right? And so you guys that are in the early part of school, this was at a conference that was done recently. When does burnout start? So this article that was in Academic Medicine, they showed that when people got into medical school, they were the students that had the best mental health compared to college students. They had the lowest burnout, the less depression, and the highest QOL. And then that pattern was reversed by the second year of medical school. And so something that is happening in medical school is making us like sort of decompensate a little bit. And I think it has to do with a little bit about this high pressure cooker that you guys are in right now. But I just want to remind you guys that you're going to be fine. This is me. So this is an example of what can happen as you go through medical school. This is me at the beginning of my MS1. And this is me at the end of MS2 year by the time I took my boards. Seriously, everyone was doing like crazy stuff just to kind of let off some steam. But I was very, very happy that we got good scores on the boards, and then Jason and I went to Thailand, and we had a little vacation, and we came back for our clinicals. I got dengue fever in Thailand, which was terrible. I spent like a week in the hospital and a week in bed, and I had purple legs, and it was a really bad way to start my third year clinicals. But it took me like a month to recover. But then I was in it. Third year was a lot of fun. As far as studying, I already kind of mentioned this, but one central source, memorize it, and recall. So as you study for these things, it's all about memorization and recall. So when I did my rotations, I don't know about Rocky Vista. I haven't had a chance to talk to you guys about what school's like, but at Midwestern, back when I was in school, there wasn't a lot of like really good core rotations at any like teaching medical center. Like we didn't have our own teaching center. So we had to they just sent us out to the community, and we were shadowing these attendings, and there weren't any like other medical students from other institutions. There wasn't any residents, and we thought that was very unusual. And so I kind of fought a little bit to be able to go to other places, and they agreed, and they let us go all over the place. And I went all over the country. I went to Seattle for plastic surgery, went to the East Coast, to do emergency medicine. I went to Colorado, did dermatology, surgery. I went to Chicago for trauma surgery. I went to Chicago Northwestern for anesthesiology. So I really got a chance to do a lot of sub-Is, and it was because of this weird thing. So what this story is about, in this particular moment, it was like there weren't any good, like we had a problem with our rotations, but I made the best of it. So I just kind of went everywhere, and it was great. I got to see all these different hospitals and a lot of different really interesting specialties. And when I came to my fourth year, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I felt like everybody kind of knew what they wanted. I had no clue. I was interested I saw the things that you guys wrote down. You guys are interested in a lot of different things, like emergency medicine. Most of you here, raise your hand if you're interested in anesthesiology. So a lot of people here are interested in anesthesia, but a lot of you probably have like second and third choices, so you're not sure. So I had no clue, and I was thinking, well, when I did anesthesia, the first time I saw an anesthesiologist, I was like, I thought it was boring. I'm just like, this is ridiculous. Like the surgeon and I was scrubbed in with the surgeon, and we're doing the case, and the anesthesiologist was standing there, and I'm just like, I could never do that. That's just crazy, and I had no clue. And I think that's what most people just have no clue what anesthesia is, what it's all about. And I wound up giving it a chance, and I'm glad that I did, because it's really interesting. So when I was gung-ho surgery, like I don't know, I didn't even think about anesthesia at first. I was like, it was so hardcore surgery, but there was something, I don't know, after doing all these surgery rotations, after a while I was just like, is this it? I'm not sure. I was interested in plastic surgery. Finally I was just like, let's try anesthesia. So I went to Northwestern, and it was okay. Like I'm not gonna say I was in love with it, but one thing did happen is that I read this Baby Miller. Have you guys heard of this? It's the anesthesia little textbook. Instead of like the Big Miller, there's this, we call it Baby Miller. And they said, oh, you should read this, And I read it like cover to cover in this rotation, and I thought that was really unusual because I just read it and I was just enjoying the physiology and pharmacology. That's the kind of stuff that I really was excited to read about, how to basically apply all the stuff that you guys are working on right now. So I liked reading about it, and I still was like, that's still probably going to do surgery. So when I got into like the beginning of my 4th year, I started really freaking out because it was time to decide. And it was time to put those applications in. And I was really freaking out. And so some people were thinking like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, so I'm gonna wait. And I thought that was a crazy idea because you know how competitive it is. You gotta get interviews. I said, forget it. This is what I was interested in. And I'm not kidding. I actually applied to all of these because you could do it on this like centralized ERAS application service. You could just indicate what you wanted at no extra charge. And I definitely don't recommend doing this. But then what happened was a very interesting thing, which was I never even did any essays. I didn't put in a CV or anything. It just had my board scores, and I applied to all these different schools in all these different specialties, and I started getting interviews at every single one because I had good board scores. And that confused me even more. But it did highlight something that I think was, for better or worse, we kind of knew what the game was back then, which was the board score was your first hurdle to get an interview. So I decided that I was going to go on an anesthesia interview. And so I went to Johns Hopkins, and my friends thought I was nuts because they're like, that's your first interview? And so I went out there, I'm just like, I need to see what this place is all about. And I went out there and they said, don't tell them that you don't know. Don't tell them that you're just not sure. Because they're going to see right through that, and that's not going to be good. And I did the exact opposite. They sat down with me in my interview at Johns Hopkins. They're like, well, what do you like about anesthesia? Like, why do you want to be an anesthesiologist? And I'm like, I got to be honest with you. Like, I'm not sure. I think it's maybe right for me. I like surgery. But I was very honest with them, and they loved that honesty. And it made sense to me at the time. It's like, how could anybody be so sure what you want to do with the rest of your life? You could only be like a little bit sure. And they loved that honesty so much, and they said, we felt the same way. Like, we didn't know what to do. Like, we thought maybe surgery, we liked being in the OR, we tried anesthesia, and here we are. And so I was, in the interview process, I was starting to get a feel for maybe I'm learning a little bit more about it from other people that I was meeting. And I started doing more and more, I only did one general surgery interview, and it was at a place that I did a rotation at, so I really knew the program director. And at the end of the interview season, I said, listen, I'm going to do anesthesia, but I want to come here for my surgery internship. And he's like, no problem. We wish we could have you as a categorical, but there's virtually nobody, they never match all the sub-Is at this place, and it's St. Joe's in Denver. And so I was able to match for surgery and for my internship. So I kind of got the best of both worlds. I matched for anesthesia at Yale, and I matched for general surgery for my internship. And that was, I thought that was actually that was the best that I could do at the time, because I was too confused. Now, when it comes to choosing a specialty, there's a lot of stuff you can do, and I did it all. I really did it all. One of the best things you can do is to continue to talk to people like me and ask them, what is your life like, and what do you do? And that's what I'm going to try to get into. You could find mentors. You could just what I think you should do is try an exercise called visualizing your perfect week. So maybe we could do this right now. So here's the exercise. And I want you to do this with me right now. And don't tell anybody your answers, but then do it again tomorrow. But keep this to yourself, okay? Because the goal here is to dream as widely as possible. So this is me. I'm working through my perfect week. And this is what I did. I did this with OB, surgery, anesthesia. I'm like, I don't know where I came up with this idea, but it nothing. I wasn't getting anywhere. So I'm like, okay, well, what's my perfect week? I have so many interests. I don't want to work the weekend. I kind of want an extra day off during the week. And then I'll work a full day on one of the days. And then I'll work a half day maybe on Friday. And maybe I'll work a half day on Wednesday. And I don't know, that's something like that. I mean, I didn't share this with anybody, but this is what I was thinking. I'm like, I needed to make room for some other things. Like, I want to do some teaching, maybe at a university, or maybe I will teach. And then I was thinking children. I wanted to take care of children. That's what I wanted my patients to be. I thought maybe a little bit of a clinic day, but for the most part, I was not a clinic guy. That's one thing I can tell you is to, if you need help trying to figure out what you want to do, try to decide whether you like the clinic or in the OR. I like procedures, so I'll do some procedures on Tuesday. Thursday I want to go rock climbing because I like to climb. I want to play my guitar, make sure there's that, there's hiking. Do you see where I'm going with this? It's kind of like, I was really visualizing sort of like the end destination, like, you know, and it has to include everything that's me. It's not just about work. And then, of course, there's family. And I was single, but I'm like, I know family's going to be in there at some point, so I want to see my family every single day. So this is what I want you guys to do, is to do that and then don't tell anybody. One thing I would caution you for is if you're thinking about like something where you're like, okay, that's too hard, or that's too long a training, don't do that. It's going to fly by. And you've got to be thinking more like 30-year plan. Like, what am I going to enjoy for 30 years? And believe me, like, what is difficult is something that you will come to enjoy. So definitely don't discount anything if you think it's difficult. You may really enjoy it. Okay, one thing that I threw this in here, but I think one of the things I wish that, I know you guys aren't thinking about it now, but it's something that I think is really ruining American medicine, which is money. It's basically, here's a secret. If you talk to a lot of physicians, I talk to a lot of physicians, and most physicians that I talk to now they're really frustrated. Like this is a really frustrating time to be a doctor in America, and it's also a really frustrating time to be a patient. And so you have to be very careful when you start asking people for, you know, advice and ask them what it's like, because they're going to say a lot of negative stuff. And I want you to take that with a grain of salt. Like, I'm a very positive person, but I went through like a really hard time. But now I'm very optimistic on medicine. Like I see us as now you guys are going to really change medicine, and it's going to get better. Like, we're seeing suicide and burnout at an all-time high, but I think the pendulum is about to swing. So I think it's an exciting time to come in. But one of the things that I would encourage you to do is to learn about money. Don't be money hungry, but be learn about it, because it's not really on your radar now, but it will be. And I don't know what it costs to go to, I don't know the cost of all these medical schools, but it's not cheap, and you'll be paying it for a long time. And so money does become an issue. And what you really want is you don't want to worry about money, you want to worry about doing something that you love. That's what it's all about. So these are some of the things that I thought that I wish that I knew about. I wish someone had basically gave me a little class on finance. I wish someone told me about the White Coat Investor website, or maybe just if that even that didn't even exist then. But there's this book, White Coat Investor, which if you could just read it before you're done with your whatever, on a vacation or something, it's just gonna just something that you know about. So that's all I'm gonna say about money. Obviously, you guys know exactly how to do your study schedule, so I'm not going to get into that. When it comes to study, kind of like with this story with Stephanie and Jason, you've got on the one hand, there's the obsession of going so crazy with your studying, but then on the other side of it is you're at risk for failing. And what I think is there's 3 speeds, and you need to be able to know how to move back and forth between 3 speeds. When do you go intense, and when do you back off and sort of take in a little bit of life. Somebody had asked about rotations. I think that just being positive and asking a lot of questions is huge. Just be interested, and it's continue to ask the person about their life, and just keep asking questions, not necessarily about the actual patients and the pathophysiology, but about them too. And that's going to bring you together and strengthen that bond. And I think that's when I think students are really memorable. And I have students all the time now. And the ones that I really remember are the ones that really tried to get to know me. Obviously, be on time. I used to have a little trick where the first day of every rotation I would bring in, donuts or something, and that's a huge hit. It was a very kind of a cheap thing to do, but I don't know, I did it, and it just was a nice way to meet people. And I guess I'm still doing it because there's going to be food in 20 minutes. So, okay. So there were some questions about what as far as what are these programs looking for? Program A. I just got off the phone with one program, and And so one of the programs, I'll just tell you, one program is USC and one program is Yale. So I went to Yale, and then the other program is USC, where I'm on faculty. So program A says, okay, we don't have a cutoff with USMLE step 1. It could be down to 210, it could be up to 260. They said the average is 240. I mean, that sounds high to me. They said it's not so much that there's any one cutoff, it's just that they would prefer that if you failed and then you took it again. I mean, even that's not the end of the world, but that makes it harder if you were to fail the test. But what they do look at is your sort of like this composite letter that your dean will put together for you, and your personal statement, letters of recommendation, the CV, your evaluations, your core rotations. They look at all this stuff and they see, is this a consistent message about this person? And that can compensate for a lower board score. So this particular program is very reassuring. Listen, it's not all about the score, okay? It's just not all about the score. So just remember that. Program B had a similar message, not so much all about the score. They liked U.S. medical schools, so that's DO, MD. A lot of it is luck, so sometimes it's just straight up luck, They said it's generally USMLE over 220, which it's a good program, but it's, obviously there's going to be schools that have higher cutoffs. But they look for red flags, so things that were a failed test or failed class or just red flags, unless there's a really good story behind it. And then they want written, they like the written comments from your core rotations. But this particular school said that they did not think personal statements and letters were very helpful. Letters generally are always positive, and I obviously treat this stuff as important, but it just goes to show you that it's just not always about the test. So let's talk a little bit about what anesthesia is. Anesthesia is the composite of 3 or 4 different things. It's analgesia, it's amnesia or unconsciousness, and it's immobility. And in the middle you have this little sweet spot. And when you are achieving all of that, then you have good anesthesia. And the trick is to be able to do that during a very hostile time for the patient. Basically, you're protecting the patient from the surgeon, and the surgeon's there's all these horrible things that are happening to the human body, and your job is to maintain homeostasis. And the way I tell my patients' parents is, my job is to make sure that your baby is safe and comfortable. And that's what I do. It's safety and comfort. And it's very little bit about it is basically keeping them asleep. That's just a small part. It's really keeping them alive. Some things that I thought about anesthesia, I really enjoyed reading about it. I was very lukewarm on actually doing it and being in it, but things I like about it, flexible lifestyle, just because you don't have clinic. I kind of liked the fact that I was not watching the clock, and that was true whenever I was in the operating room, whether I was doing surgery or anesthesia. I just wasn't watching the clock, but I was watching the clock when I was in the clinic. That's my fault. I wasn't engaging properly. If you ever catch yourself thinking that something is boring, it's not that it's really boring. It's you missed something. So if someone's just standing there, they're probably thinking and very stressed out, and you're not picking up on what that was. And what I missed in the clinic was I missed the fact that you engage with these patients and have these really meaningful relationships. And I actually think I would love, if I went into family practice, I think I would eventually, I would love it. I like doing procedures, and I liked that it had a favorable medical legal sort of an outlook. And the reason I say that is anesthesia is the safest specialty, so it's always been about patient safety. Anesthesia was the first to come up with these monitors pulse oximetry, and now pulse oximetry is all over the hospital. So anesthesia is kind of at the forefront of patient safety. Generally what happens is in anesthesia is if you have a patient injury or something, you know about it right away. So there's usually no surprise, some patient comes back to you a year later or something. If something happens, you know about it. But generally it's really, it's a really safe specialty. I love the fact that it's A to Z skill set. Somebody said that to me when I was when I was a resident at Yale, I just was super frustrated, and I wasn't happy with the residency. Not the residency. I wasn't happy with what I was doing. I was doing anesthesia, but I'm like, I don't think this is me. I think I should be doing surgery. And this guy was my chief resident. He was trying to explain it. He's like, you don't understand. Like, you get this skill set that's A to Z. I'm like, what does that mean? Well, what that means is, at any place in the hospital, if there's like a code or if there's something, you can walk in and you can basically just do every single thing that needs to be done. So little things like unwrapping the package for like an IV set and spiking the fluid and putting in an IV and drawing up a medication and administering it. Like, we're the only physicians in the hospital that will think about a decision to order a drug and then mix the drug up ourselves and administer it. Nobody else does that in the hospital. That's a very strange, and it's like good and bad because we're very fast, but you could also make mistakes. But that's what I mean by when I say A to Z skill set. We intubate, we do all this stuff, we're good in codes. And that's something that's really, that's very useful in all situations. And I'm getting interested a lot right now with doing like flying with our helicopter team, and it's awesome. Like, transport medicine is all about, basically anesthesia skills are very, very portable. I don't know how much we should get into peds versus adults, but somebody had asked, is it different? And it's very different. I love taking care of kids and babies because, I don't know, it's just like, I love the fact that they haven't, it's like they're at the beginning of their life, and so they haven't really done anything to themselves. And that's different than taking care of people that don't take care of themselves. There's nothing wrong with taking care of them. I thought it was kind of neat to do pediatrics because it was, I just felt like you could really feel the innocence, and I like small, when I work with babies, it's very difficult procedures. I love the fact that it was very like difficult, and all the fine movements were very challenging. Okay, so I went to my residency. So I matched in anesthesia, and as soon as I matched, I treated myself to a 6-week research elective at Mount Everest, which was one of the best experiences of my life. And so I worked at Mount Everest. I did research. I'll probably talk a little bit about that. Maybe when I come back, we'll talk a little bit more about some of my travels. But surgery internship. Surgery internship was like this brutal wake-up call. Like, medical school was this beautiful thing, and it was so exciting, and I had all my friends, and then bam! It was just like the dream was over it was just so, they were so mean to us, and I really hope this never happens to you, but the hazing was so bad. The verbal abuse was really bad, and it was constantly making us feel like we were stupid when we just didn't really know what we're doing because we were brand new. We're brand new doctors. And it's like, it was not a nurturing environment, and I feel like that had affected me bad for a long time. But I wasn't the only